Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel Hi-Fi Study for You. Today in this video, we will be going to cover one of the most important and interesting part of our biology, and that is what we understand today and what should we, that is the blood. So today we will be going to talk about the very important component of our body and very important tissue though, and that is blood. So today we are talking about this one. So let's begin. Firstly, if we understand blood, so let's understand what is a blood actually. How will you define it? So basically, if you talk about this blood, then it is basically a fluid connective tissue. It is a fluid connective tissue. Now this term totally defined blood because blood is fluid. Fluid means anything which have fluidity, and fluidity means something or the ability or the property of any material to flow. It's the property through which blood flow. So as we know blood can flow, so it's fluid. Connective, it connects something, and I will tell you in short which thing it connects. It connects something, so it's connective. It's very important or extremely important connective tissue in our body. And tissue, we all know, when the group of cells stack together and forms a very ever seen before excited creature as human beings or any other organism. That is what tissue is. So it's basically fluid connective tissue, which is our blood. So let's begin with this blood. Now, this is what is blood. Now, if we talk about blood and its composition, let's talk first about the composition of blood. From which thing blood is basically got formed. So, from which thing it is formed? So, let me tell you. First thing is that if we talk about in the composition, there are basically three major components from which this was formed. So firstly, blood is basically, it's totally 100%. Then in blood, 55%. 55% is basically plasma. Plasma is basically the fluid material. It's the only thing through which blood can flow. We talked today that blood is a fluid connective tissue. If plasma were not there, blood will rigid. It cannot be able to flow, and rigid is something which have fixed shape, means it cannot flow. But today blood can flow due to plasma. Plasma is basically a light yellow material which is like swim inside the blood through which blood can flow, or the components can flow effectively, if we say. That is what a plasma is. Then how much percent is left? Yes, 45%. So here 45% is basically our blood cells or blood corpuscles. So here is blood cells. Got it? So 45% are our blood cells, 55% is plasma, and I told you what is the plasma. Now talking about blood cell is a very important part actually. So 45% is got formed by blood cells. Blood cells, as I mentioned, is of three types: RBC, WBC and platelet. I will mention here, okay? So firstly, let's rub all this and clearly understand about blood cells. And do you know the study of blood is what we call very importantly blood biology as cell biology, what we say for cell study. So talking about the components, we reach to the blood cells. So blood cells are of three types as we categorize them, and we should be. The first one is RBC. What is RBC? RBC is actually stands for red blood cell. Let me mention for you. Red blood cells. What are they by the term? We should be know if we don't know. Red blood cells, these are some cells which are red in color and the components, the very very important components of our blood in our blood cells as a form of blood cells. So talking about RBC, it is very unique actually, because a mature RBC cell basically lacks nuclei. It doesn't contain nucleus in it. And why doesn't it contain nucleus? That's the story of another day. Because it doesn't contain the nucleus, because it have to transport so many materials. It have to transport oxygen for cell, all the cells, and I will mention the functions of RBC, and then we will see what are they. Talking about RBC, in scientific terms, RBC is basically called erythrocytes. Okay. RBC is basically circular disc or saucer shaped. You know saucer? We drink the tea from which, that is a saucer shape. Saucer shape is basically circular, something like this or disc shaped. Okay. This is basically RBC. Okay. It's assume it's red in color. Okay. So RBC basically circular and is red in color. And why it is red in color, or the direct question, why blood is red, or why the blood flowing in your body is of red color? We know that blood is red because of a pigment which is present inside the RBC, which is attached as Fe plus ions. They are Fe plus ions. Fe plus ions are basically hemoglobin. These are hemoglobin pigments which are present in our RBC, through which blood is red, or RBC is red in color, and we call it RBC. If hemoglobin was not there, we will call just WBC. Okay, and the story ends. Okay, so second blood cell is basically WBC, as I mentioned. So let's understand about them. Before that, as I mentioned, we will talk about the functions of RBC. So RBC, first go to the backstory. RBC is basically, as I mentioned, is something or the cells through which the transportation of materials happen very effectively. These are the cells. Let's understand. This is a cell. Okay, what will happen? That the oxygen from our lungs, we breathe, and we exhale CO2. We inhale oxygen, the cool air which we get from the trees. So we inhale oxygen. Then what will happen? That in this is RBC. Okay, this is RBC. Assume it's red in color. Then this RBC, what will happen? Then oxygen molecules will stack to the surface of it. Assume this is oxygen molecules. They will stack over the surface of RBC. These are O2 molecules. These are O2 molecules basically. Now it's clear. Okay. O2 molecules will stack to the surface. What will they? The transportation will be so effective by this RBC that through which they will be easily got transported. This is the function of RBC. And as I mentioned, RBC or mature RBC basically lacks the nucleus because it have to transport many materials. It have the hemoglobin pigment. So the inside material of this cell is basically not present. It just exhaled out. Nucleus is not also there. So that's the reason why nucleus is not here. So a very important thing, that it lacks nucleus. The second blood cells, if we talk about that, is WBC. So what that is? That is WBC. WBC, if we talk about, is white blood cells. So what are they? These are white blood cells. These are white blood cells mentioned, white in color. And why they are white in color? Because they lack hemoglobin. They don't have hemoglobin. And if they don't have, they are colorless, guys. So this is white blood cells. And in scientific terms, WBCs are basically called leukocytes. Do you know what are they called? Leukocytes. These are something which are colorless. And what are the function of WBC? WBC is the first in our immunity system. These are some species which attack to all those pathogens. And do you know pathogens? Yes, something that harms us, that cause diseases, or microbes that cause diseases, or disease causing microbes. Go to another. So there are pathogens, it kill all the pathogens, means it's a defense minister of ourselves if we talk about it for our blood, okay. So that is what WBC is, basically clean our blood, purify our blood. In my terms, that is what WBC is. Now that is WBC, let's move to the last one, that is our platelets. The third blood cell, that is our platelets. Platelets. Talking about places, it have entirely different work. If you ever had a cut, and you obviously, so what will happen? The blood will come out from your vessels. Then what will happen? That after some time, clotting will be there. Clotting will be there, and that clotting is basically caused by platelets. Platelets are these guys. What will do? What will they do? That they will clot your blood. So its basically main function is the clotting of our blood. Clotting of our blood. That is what the function of platelets. Okay, this is a major function of clotting of our blood. So through which we can get is also like WBC and platelets are engaged in our immune system. RBC is engaged in our respiratory system. Okay, that was the all about this one. Now RBC, if we talk about that RBC, which was the first blood cell, it was basically got formed in the bone marrow. Now let me tell you what is bone marrow. Okay, RBC are basically formed in our bone marrow. See, this is basically a bone. Okay, there we have another bone here. Okay, now what is bone marrow? If we talk about it, then the inside bone we have an area which is like perforated and something like this, and these areas are basically called bone marrows. Many important things are also made here, and RBC is also basically generated here. The bone of RBC lies in bone marrow. Okay. Now talking about blood, as we know that let's talk about some basic points of blood after we completed the composition of blood. So as we know, and we should, and in our in any other, the blood is basically 5 to 6 liters. Okay, that is what the blood is for in our body. And then after, blood is basically anything which have a very important functions for our body, and that would fluid connective tissue makes our body is, and that is blood. And for women it's slightly less, is 4 to 5 liter. Okay, that is the basic difference. And what is about the blood? So that is all about blood biology. And stay safe, keep learning. Thank you.